principal and founder of Tipping Point Solutions. I'm here today representing Sustainable Architectures to discuss redesigning the digital blueprint for a resource-constrained future. Some of the work here today has been included in the Sustainable IT Playbook for Technology Leaders, published by Nicholas Sundberg and Richard Pastor in January of this year. So, a brief review of the agenda. The need for responsible AI. I'm going to highlight some of the impacts on the planet Earth that have gotten worse with the deployment of AI everywhere. We're going to review the role of enterprise architecture in ESG. We're going to discuss the responsible technology framework, which is an architectural framework being defined by our organization. And then we're going to go into some examples of how to architect for sustainable IT and responsible AI. And finally, time permitting, we're going to review our global mission for the architecture community. I want to start with a quote to motivate everybody by Isra Hirsi. We are the generation with the power to change the world. Let's use that power to create a sustainable future for all. So let's look at the need for responsible AI and its impacts on planet Earth. 536 terawatts of data are expected to be used 2025 through 2026 globally across the data centers in the world. That's equivalent to powering 50 million US homes. In the US, data centers currently account for 6% of the country's electricity. By 2035, data centers will reach over 1,700 terawatts. The projected global AI water consumption by 2027 may reach 4.2 to 6.6 billion cubic meters. And by 2027, that may be 4 to 6 times the annual consumption of the entire country of Denmark. There is 63 million tons of e-waste added to landfills or incinerated annually, enough to fill 1.55 million 40-ton trucks bumper to bumper around the equator. And by 2030, global e-waste could reach 80 million tons. And finally, the contribution of greenhouse gases from the world's digital ecosystem is equivalent to 2 to 4%. Which is on par with the entire aviation sector. So we have these root causes with digital transformation, but they've definitely increased with AI. I think we've heard from our previous speakers that this is due to computational intensity, training and running large AI models that require massive amounts of electricity, AI relying on processing and storing large data sets, which once again contributes to energy and water consumption, cooling requirements because AI generates significant heat, e-waste, which I just mentioned, and the short lifespan of specialized hardware used in AI. And then one I'd like to double click on, which is manufacturing and resource extraction. And the production of AI hardware, which requires the extraction of rare earth minerals and other materials, potentially leading to environmental degradation. So what is enterprise architecture's role in ESG? 2 years in a row, sustainableIT.org has done a survey with 11 IT capabilities on a CMMI scale of 1 to 5. And both times, enterprise architecture came in dead last, scoring 1.8. What are some of the insights we can draw from that? One, sustainability is treated as an afterthought rather than a core design principle for net new applications, infrastructure, and AI. Two, without EA at the forefront, organizations risk fragmented technology decisions, missed carbon reduction opportunities, and the deployment of opaque, non-compliant AI solutions, which we're already seeing today. EA needs to fortify itself by orchestrating a cross-disciplinary environment of collaboration, where there's stage gate reviews, enforcing sustainability, ethics, and fairness at every lifecycle stage, from strat planning architecture through design, development, and deployment. Most companies do have an architecture review board, and now we're recommending reporting and requiring sustainability model cards, impact analysis, and bias testing. And finally, traceability, ensuring direct linkage from corporate ESG goals down to individual AI workloads. With this, we're saying that EA must move from gatekeepers to sustainability architects at the front door. Enterprise architects today currently are focused on finding solutions that meet digital advancements and enable business value through agility and velocity. They're also charged with looking at OpEx reduction by looking at tech debt elimination and application rationalization. We're saying with new tools to do architectural designs, the solutions can also look for opportunities that solutions have lower emissions, reduce e-waste, and that we look for circular IT opportunities. So what is the responsible technology framework that we're designing in sustainablearchitectures.org? The architectural paradigm shift I'm displaying shows legacy architecture versus sustainability against what larger organizations call brownfield and how to get to greenfield. So in legacy, there was a dimension around a primary driver for speed, scale, and cost. We're now saying to shift that to resource efficiency, circularity, and ethics. In legacy, there was a dimension around cost analysis and the total cost of ownership tied to financial OpEx. We're now saying shift to a dual mandate tied to financial OpEx plus carbon costs and emissions liability. Finally, in recent years, there's been a dimension on AI deployment with maximum parameter size and compute volume. And we're saying shift to right-sized explainable models running in low carbon regions during off-peak hours. This allows organizations to move from legacy brownfield into greenfield. This slide comes from sustainableIT.org, and it's a reference model that they've started to define for capabilities tied to the enterprise, the top showing sustainable by IT and the capabilities needed to ensure ESG and reporting compliance. The bottom shows sustainability in IT and represents the business of IT and the high-level capabilities and technologies that IT needs to ensure we factor sustainability and responsible AI frameworks and metrics into. So, architecting for sustainable IT and responsible AI. How do we go about doing this? Enterprise architects are responsible for understanding an entire organization's estate, tied to linking CEO and shareholder strategies into their roadmaps of current to future state, and taking into account a lot of these bullets. Now we're laying on top of our normal way of looking at an estate and adding in corporate strategy tied to sustainability goals. Looking at understanding go-to-market strategies, but understanding the implications of deploying AI. Including in our risk and compliance strategy, ESG standards and reporting on ISO standards and UN SDGs. Looking at deployment and data sovereignty tied to geographical strategies. And I'll get a bit more into the technology strategy around architecting for modernization, but taking sustainability and AI into account, both from a technology and a solution perspective. From a supply chain, EAs have always been involved with procurement, understanding viable technologies to go after. And we're now saying look for sustainable sourcing and looking at vendor contracts that ensure they're producing metrics on how they're handling sustainability. And finally, adding the financial and metrics strategy, carbon cost accounting, and green ops metrics. So EA can approach sustainability and responsible AI both from a top-down by designing for sustainability, leveraging net new existing EA principles, patterns, and standards, and a bottom-up, which is responsibly green IT, by assessing your existing infrastructure and applications and measuring your carbon footprints, inclusive of vendor and supplier footprints, and beginning to analyze your technology portfolio and setting simple initial goals. We stress that both drivers, top down and bottom up, should focus on driving engagement, educating your technology and business disciplines, identifying green enthusiasts and forming teams, and working with your vendors. So what does sustainable by design look like top down? This actually represents the sustainablearchitectures.org meta model. And what you can see is various architecture disciplines and competencies and their viewpoints. And what we're now doing to come up with viable solution architecture designs is including one or more of these viewpoints and the principles we're defining for sustainability and responsible AI, as well as patterns that we include in the viable solutions, which would be reviewed by governance and strategy within an architecture review board that now needs to include responsible AI charter, AI ethics, and KPIs aligned to sustainability and inclusion. We've represented these across our community in 7 working groups and have included metrics in green ops due to the importance of dynamic workload shifting, auto scaling and serverless models, AI ML for carbon aware scheduling, and right sizing and shutting down idle resources. So this view represents the different viewpoints and how we would apply actions to those viewpoints to solution a viable recommendation that meets a business ask. But what we're showing that is that rather than treating sustainability and AI ethics as external audits, we cascade these principles layer by layer through the architecture stack. High-level corporate promises at Tier 1 translate directly into physical metal realities at Tier 6 and ensure security throughout. So a bottom-up approach, sustainable by design. We've taken the 7 R's of cloud and actually defined sustainability 7 R's tied to retire, reimagine, right size, relocate, re-architect, reschedule, and renegotiate, which is once again working with vendors on sustainability standards. I'm going to double click today into the 3 R's in the middle that have been highlighted in the Sustainable IT Playbook around right size, relocate, and re-architect, and how to go about doing that. So within architecture, we've always been asked to look at evaluating our technology and our application estate from technology fit and currency against business value and features. And we've done that through the years, tied to evaluating our entire portfolio against tolerate, innovate, invest, migrate, or eliminate, or what we call the time matrix. In this view, actually, the bubbles represent various applications and SaaS applications, both custom and SaaS, and we evaluate them once again along tech currency and fit and business value and fit. What we're now recommending is there's an opportunity to re-architect by evaluating those same applications by calculating their carbon emissions through various rate-based calculations like SEI, and then calculating those same applications against a carbon cost and plotting those into the time matrix. When you overlay those 3 different matrices, you can actually start to define what your current state is, but understand what you can eliminate and or migrate, and opportunities to actually invest more or innovate net new with the value of meeting business needs, alignment to tech, and alignment to reducing your carbon emissions by applying these viewpoints. According to the book, there is an opportunity through app portfolio carbon emission rationalization to get to an application portfolio that still does what architects did in the past of simplifying by eliminating redundant shadow IT, modernizing to address security and improving operating characteristics, and doing transformation by increasing asset utilization and reducing carbon intensity. By doing this reduction, there is a potential to save 84 to 98% in carbon emissions. But that's not the whole story, because as enterprise architects, even before we apply carbon emissions and carbon costs, EA has always faced challenges in application rationalization and technology modernization. Some of the ones that have always been significant barriers include short-term business priorities outweighing modernization investments, and monolithic legacy systems being costly and difficult to modernize. Modernization competes with revenue-generating initiatives and funding and sometimes goes to the back burner, and fixed OpEx models limit investment in long-term transformation. And finally, in larger orgs, there's incomplete app inventories with ownership issues, which makes it very hard to figure out the roadmap to get from where you are to where you need to go, just to name a few. I will say, in speaking with some of the companies that I've worked with, that RFPs are starting to put in a 15 to 20% evaluation weighting tied to sustainability capabilities, emissions reduction commitments, and circularity, focused on contractual KPIs. So let's quickly talk about the global mission of the architecture community moving forward. So right now, we lack standardized patterns to combat the environmental crisis. We must build them together, advancing the adoption of sustainable IT and responsible AI across the globe. Our organization is part of ISA Global, and we're focused on building out a development track for certification in sustainability and responsible AI for architects in the various competencies within architecture. We leverage the ISA Beta Book, which is an open source business technology book of knowledge, which anybody can access to understand start to finish how to engage with the business and design through all those viewpoints that I shared with you previously. And we're looking to gather and curate real world stories, proven patterns, and implemented successes into the book of knowledge. We've created a community of architects and C-level IT thought leaders focused on ensuring sustainability, which is a criteria when designing solutions to meet business needs. And we're currently at 192 global members, C-level, CIO, CTO, chief architects, and enterprise architects across the globe supporting our initiative. So the blueprint is drawn, the execution's up to us. Join our movement. We're looking for individual contributors to join our 7 work groups and contribute case studies and help design training material. And we're looking for company sponsors that can dedicate resources to build the community and sponsor education. You can register at our website, which is sustainablearchitectures.org. Finally, here's a QR code to an amazing book that portions of this talk were generated from. I was a contributor into the architecture sections of the book, but the Sustainable IT Playbook for Technology Leaders is a step-by-step guidance for sustainability in IT by IT, and I highly recommend the book. And with that, I thank you for your time. And if you need any other additional information, please feel free to email me or reach out on our website. Thank you.